Roleplay Cafe, still here. This is a VR, be it virtual reality or video response to Jason's earlier video about characters, which he also mentions rolling to hit, which I'll address at first. As that is one of the things that kind of prompted the mechanism in Dark Age Man to be a single roll narrative prompt mechanism. Now, originally I'd asked that question, why are we rolling the hit, to Ivan years ago in a personal message, and he took it in one direction. And what I had thought initially was akin to what Jason mentioned, like, why are we rolling a hit? Just to miss, and then you miss, I miss, maybe you hit. So if you want to shave that fat, as I like to say, and get to the point, let's just have a one roll system and find out what the first telling blow was. Let's cut all that extra BS away. Assume that we're in a fight, a furious fight, and then somebody lands purchase and does something that, this is in one respect the way I like to think of like hit points is, well, in fact, while we do wounds, like, old school wounds, hit point, not just as a wearing down of someone, because I kind of extrapolate that from the length of the battle and what's been said narratively. But when you hit somebody, that's a wound. Even though we do have, like in a wound system, we got fatigued and whatnot. It's kind of built in to prompt narrative direction toward, how it's going to proceed as it's occurring with each die roll, right? He's batting you up, you're winded, get another hit, then you're wounded inside, and you can elaborate on that narratively with the dialogue that happens. So that was a question that I had. That original system was prompted with playing on the forums, and it's kind of like a play-by-post, right? It's not expedient to say, hey, you're being attacked, roll for initiative, and then a day or two later somebody responds and said, okay, I got this. No, it can't be that way. I need a narrative prompt to move forward. So that just helped, and it just dovetailed in with what we was doing with Dark Age Man. Expedite play and roll through with the narrative and keep it alive and organic and evolving in the mind's eye, the communal mind's eye at the table. Unfolding, everybody's engaged. Well, the environment is there for everyone to more so readily have opportunity to become engaged and invested and immersed. All right, so that's all good. I go to characters. Several things about characters. First, I go to the OSR, or back in the day when back in 84, 5, around that time, right, was picking up a character. Now, you got your attributes, and they may define a character. Whether it was said or not, it could have been an unspoken thing if you wanted to kind of craft how your character was. If he's a weakling, I mean, you wouldn't want to represent your character. So it's kind of like it was there. You roll average on your strength. Somebody else rolls a 17, he's a pretty beefy boy or girl or what have you, right? If somebody's, a dollar that rolls a 6 under their intellect, they can't be a genius. So it may factor in how you want to represent this character. But usually, typically, in my play in those days, it wasn't really overly stated as much. I mean, it could be naturally, intuitively assumed, and I think people would pick up and play from that. But to my recollection, it wasn't so. We would just play. I think probably some DMs would want to integrate like puzzles that you may, as a player, tactilely be involved with. Maybe I throw you a Rubik's Cube and say, give me 2 sides of this Rubik's Cube and you'll unlock this door and we can get through. So you're doing it like an avatar and you're getting to experience that way. Oh yeah, I just unlocked it. Let's go find out what's going on. So you're playing your character. Whether or not he's got a a 3 intellect or what. You just did that. So there could have been, GMs doing, our DMs rather, doing that back in the day as a trick, and it's just what it was. So I read Gary Gygax said that once. He said, don't be irritated if somebody's at a table with a low intellect and playing their character that way, because that's their character. You got to separate the character from the player. He's not sabotaging it. You just got a simpleton in the party, right? Which I know that the guys in Joth are having to contend with that nowadays, right? Because my character Nick has a five intellect, right? All right. So you got that. I think there was some yielding of character types. Not only that, but like in alignments too. So that's part of Nook's deal. He's playing with his alignment, I still run, and I'm mindful of that. So that, at least I think back in the day, they would want you to play toward that alignment. I think it's beneficial. It could be something that can be played off of and examined, whether or not your character comes in contact with something that, some kind of maybe if he's good or paladin, especially when you're dealing with the supernatural aspects, that, he wouldn't want to be involved with, or somebody else might be chill with. So characterizations, attributes, and more so, like alignments, I think back in the day, alignments were more, I think, well, both are more mechanical to some extent, like literally what kind of bonuses or negatives you had that were affecting you mechanically. But the GM knew your alignment, and you had to play accordingly. Otherwise, you would get reprimanded with it, or you should have mechanically, right? So I think that was in play. Maybe not, if not immediately, it gained some traction, I think, just by intuitively understood, if it wasn't outright said. Then you got games like Traveler who have a different creation system, right? Which was appreciative, because my D&D days, everybody just started out as, like a grunt. Was born from his wargaming DNA. It didn't really, I don't think, took into any kind of consideration that. And plus, everybody has to start somewhere, so you want to start on the ground floor as a buck private and see if you can make your way up, right? So it had the long-term investment from the get-go. You start your character out and you build him all the way up. So D&D wasn't really built like Traveler, where you could be like, have a 40-year-old and slipping and choosing that 40-year-old and have his background history rolled up and decided, and that way you have this little well of information that you can draw from, and it kind of feeds and informs how you want to represent your character and the things that he's aware of and knowledgeable of and skill-wise in this setting. So he knows where he fits, and you do too as a player. So that that took it in that direction. There's games that have like unless you're playing a game like say Scott's Task Force Raven, which I'm really interested to get back to, because there's an automatic focus in that. There's no, the group cohesion is there from the get-go. There isn't any kind of a dissolving of characters going off in a myriad ways away from each other or what have you, right? With their own agendas and whatnot. Everybody's laser focused on what needs to be done. They're tracking with each other. They're checking. It's like a well-oiled machine. You just got to pull it off. Different type of gameplay. Love it. Looking forward to it. Now, it's admittedly a Pandora's box when you open up something to where you're allowing characters or more in character as character play when you're having these quandaries and existential crises that the character's going through, and shifting worldviews, and which can be very enriching, and on the long term, or even maybe sometimes short term, to explore with the character. And that part, like that party dynamic, and where there's more of a dispersing of different player characters, pulling and tugging, sometimes closer together, sometimes away from each other. I always think about the A-Team back in the day. You had these different personalities, and frictions that could happen, resolutions that could happen, people draw close together, apart. That's great. There has to be something on the outside, larger, pushing them together. And games try to fix this. There's, like in Peace, we had, to draw lines of, like, you had to know somebody on the party. Why were you there for them? You see this in other games, like even the Alien game. Like, somebody had to be a buddy, and then you had to have somebody be your counter that you look down on, right? So it has, you can play off of that. So there's games that give you these almost Mad Libish fill in the blank prompts of these core things that people have that either drive them together or apart, or their own personal views, the world views that you can play off of. Sometimes Star Wars, for example, I like the way that does that mechanically, in the fact that you can take, you get pay on the back end, which I don't really, as far as more points to spend for your skills, the more, I can't recollect what it is, but it's things that could come up randomly rolled that can be introduced and interjected into the story. This is interesting to me because it's actually functionally, mechanically there in the stories. It's great. We do it somewhat in Dark Age of Man, in the fact that when you start out in Dark Age of Man, the presenter's going to have random seeds. They can just be random vanilla seeds everywhere. The players go off in the directions that they want to go. Don't have to be coerced, corralled, or anything, but they're going to leave a wake. In their travels, there's going to be a wake, and they're going to touch things that's going to touch off some things that will therefore have to be folded into the next random seeds in the next games that could crop up, whether to their benefit or to their detriment. It's just in Star Wars, it's a similarity to that, in that I had to, my character, which is a Clatoonian, which they look at the huts, according to the setting info, is almost deistically. So I had a buddy, and you pick from these situations that are prompted out, and I'm sure you can probably make your own as long as the GM approves of it. But there's good prompts of, like, betrayal, or words that you can tie together and string together. I had a debt owed, I picked betrayal, I picked about 5 different things, and I tied them together in a little web of who I owed a debt to, what kind of a debt it was, who had something hanging over my head, Everyone gives the list to the GM, which in this case is Sam, and he does a roll before the game, and somebody's destiny may rear its ugly head and become part of the game, right? Same way, like in Dark Age of Man, it can come around to bite you in the rear. So that is, that to me is a good use of, like, premeditating your situation, or more so than like old school D&D where you didn't do that. You're starting with the buck private. And you just build outward. This game, Traveler, does it mechanically where you roll and you find out your past and everything, and it helps build with you. This that game, you outline things that can turn around and bite you later on. All right. Excuse me, traffic. But whenever I am playing, I generally, a lot of times in games, I will do this anyway. Now, this isn't all of the time the case. There's been, like in a game, I think I was playing, it wasn't Hex, it was, Leagues of Extraordinary Adventures, right? We started that. So I was on a boat crossing the Atlantic, I believe, and I had conceptualized that my character, who was a doctor, would be on board in the ship, but he had lost, I believe it was a sister or his love or something. He's always gone. Turned out she had some kind of hemophilia or something, some bit of blood disorder, blood and clot. And she passed away, but he's in severe denial trying to cope with this. So he's on board in the ship, and he is like wanting to prompt, whether he's doing it directly or indirectly, but he's certainly helping doctor this little fight ring that's in the base of the ship as it's in voyage. But he's doing this so he can try to practice on, stemming these blood flows and the cuts and the bruises and stopping this, right? It was just a side story that allowed him to be what he was doing on the ship. But to me, whenever I am populating my character with dilemmas and with setbacks or what have you, this just makes for I'm injecting things that I have to, as a player operating this character from this character's headspace, have to contend with, whether it's his own fear, whether it's his own apprehensions, whether it's his own goals. I find that more challenging and therefore more rewarding if I do that. So I will have a tendency to front load those into my character to where I can do this on the side. Nobody necessarily has to know, but it isn't like mechanistically necessary for me to run this game. It's almost like a side game I'm running as I'm playing these motivations. I mean, I folded that over a little bit when I was playing the Doctor in the Alien series, right? Because I said, you pick one simple thing, like something that calms you or whatever. And I said, it's a stethoscope. Old school, right? Maybe somebody thinks this is great-great-grandfather's or whatever. And he wears it, but he'll hold on to it. What he does is he listens to himself breathing, his heartbeat, to control himself, because he's got this rare heart disease that he's trying to find some kind of medication for. This is why he was prompted when he was going to different planets to look at the flora to see if he could cull some kind of new and unique medication from these alien planets, plants, etc., to get this. So it was something that the game didn't necessarily ask me to go to that depth in. It just, what was the piece that, an item that gives you comfort. But I gave more of a reason why it gave me comfort. Listen to myself, calm down, remain calm, to control my heart beating because I need to get erratic, which I thought was interesting too, because what you're trying to do in a game is control your stress level, right? So it tied in with that. So I've got that, but I don't have to, like literally when we're playing Joth, Todd will kill me off. And you got to just roll up a character on the fly. This is what happened in underneath Fingersmith Manor when my character died, and I just said, okay, I roll up a fighter. I come in the door, and he's just some kind of it was Nook. Jokingly put Steve Buscemi's face up as a profile picture, but he's got this kind of naive, simple, and I went into more of a description of him and how what has occurred to him in game has given him more of a resonance to his character, what his character means, even from just a base template or archetype of a fresh-faced pseudo-paladin, someone who wanted to go out and save the world and do good, and just had this kind of a simple, because I did roll and fly and he got a 5, but he wanted to impress upon Lauren, who was the fighter of the group, an accomplished fighter, that he was worthy too, and wanted Lauren's stamp of approval, right? That's why he was so despondent whenever he was bitten by that ghoul and paralyzed, and Lauren went down to the lower reaches and died heroically defending the escape of the others, along with Deanna. So Nook fell in disgrace and hard time and was basically beating himself up for that until this last session, which was a bit of a redemption song for him, right? So I didn't necessarily have to front load him with anything. I threw a character out there and was able to explore the character as character through play, through what occurred, what the dice brought to bear, what the world came back, in response to his actions, and it picked up the story right there. So you don't necessarily have to have a depth or whatnot, but you can play from both positions. Just grab somebody, or whether you want to preconceive something and then start with a little background too. But you just role play, be honest, be genuine, and play to the character. If you want to get a little bit into the character's head and know what motivates them and know why they tick, you can do that. Certainly so. I get it. This is satisfying. Exploring those crevices of the mind, of the character's mind. I did that with different people. I know, especially trying to get in the headspace of what makes them tick, and then you try to play from what you know of them out of the character, and it gives you more understanding because the world's kicking back things to you like it would, at least seemingly, to these people that you know. I've tried that before, so it's an exploration. But anyway, great discussion on the characters. I do think it's especially beneficial if mechanistically it can be folded into the narrative. I think Dark Age of Man does it to some degree. I think as an effect of Star Wars, it does it brilliantly so. So this is one thing that I've been thinking about recently, and why I said I had to respond to the character video Jason put up. Anyway, peace out. We'll check y'all later. Bye-bye.